maybe. Beautiful. Thank you. Um, Welcome everybody to Community Data Watch Friday for November. Who who thought we were going to get to November this quick? Today we are going to be talking about rural Halton, which has been an incredible kind of deep dive for our team, and yeah, just been a really kind of fun paper to write. Lots of great insight from community. So I'm going to start with a land acknowledgement before we get going. So we want to acknowledge that Halton is rich in the history and the modern traditions of Indigenous people. We are on the traditional lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit, part of the Anishinaabe Nation that extends from the Niagara Peninsula across Hamilton, Halton, and Toronto to the Rouge River Valley. We thank the Mississauga of the Credit First Nations for sharing this traditional territory with us. We recognize the enduring presence of Indigenous people on this land. I want to just actually share something I shared yesterday. We had the pleasure of being with our Kids Network yesterday for their annual knowledge sharing event, and we've been writing a paper on belonging sort of all year. We've been doing data collection and story collection, and we did some reflecting yesterday, and our friend Jody Harbour from Grandmother's Voice was there, and just really brought to mind again the importance of learning from the two-row wampum belt. And just thought I'd share this slide, just representing a foundational agreement between Haudenosaunee and the European settlers of North America, symbolized by two parallel rows of purple bead on a bed of white, and it represents two different people traveling side by side along the river of life, each following their own paths, yet move forward together in mutual friendship, peace, and respect, while sharing the same airs, water, and lands that sustain us. And I share that, we spent some time yesterday reflecting on the learnings from this, and in our journey on writing this paper on belonging, Jody has reminded us numerous times it is the land that connects us, and we're going to be talking about land a lot today. As we talk about, we're going to be looking at maps of systems and how it impacts our rural community. And as we were sitting there yesterday, I was thinking about coming in here today and just reflecting again, or just kind of grounding ourselves. We can get caught up in a lot of the frameworks, and there's some political pieces here and some difficult pieces here, but it is the land that connects us. And how grateful are we to have a community that we're blessed to live in, that has water, the Niagara Escarpment, rural community, just an incredible beauty. And and so just want to take that time to reflect today on how gorgeous it is, the land that we live on here in Halton, and I am grateful for it. So I just wanted to share that today. So for those of you, there's some new faces for me here today, which is always exciting. I love that new topics bring in new people. And I just wanted to take like 2 minutes just to say, who is Community Development Halton? We have been around for 41 years, if you haven't heard of us. Connecting community is what we do. We have two sort of different ways that we do it through. We are the volunteer center. We have workshops, and we have our big annual Congress tomorrow on November 8th, where we're gathering about 80, 90 folks together for training capacity building in the nonprofit sector. We celebrate National Volunteer Week, so much more. That's just a tip of the iceberg. We also have a volunteer portal. So if you're looking for a way to get involved, engaged, share your gifting community, get connected with other folks, check out this QR code, takes you to Volunteer Connector, our site, and there are literally hundreds of opportunities for you to get involved with. I see some folks on the call today, and they're agencies who have volunteer opportunities, so maybe you'll connect with some of them later. We are also the social planning organization for Halton, and so we pay attention to important information. And I, always throw up this slide just to give you some deep data points, things we pay attention to. This is tax filer data for 2023, and you can see what our poverty levels are in Halton based on that tax filer data. These may be surprising numbers to you. Milton, for example, and Oakville, over 15%. And Halton, this is a trend that is going up, and we pay attention to these things and we tell those stories, but we also bring people in to hear that story and then decide, what are we going to do about it? And so we do that through a whole bunch of different, we have National Housing Day coming up. We'll talk about more of that. We've been doing surveying on belonging, and we write something called Community Data Watch on an ongoing basis, and we share it out here. And when we try and take action. So today is about us sharing some information and then us having some conversations to say, what are we going to do with that information? We want to thank our partners who we are so grateful that they come alongside of us to do this work. So in particular, the regional municipality of Halton supports our agency to do this work, as does the United Way of Halton Hamilton. And we also want to thank the peer reviewers who took time to review this document. So everything that we write, we send out to the world and we ask for opinion, and we get their feedback, and then we work through that as we write the paper. So this is a very community-informed paper that we're sharing with you today, and we are grateful for the people who took the time to do that. So let's get into it. Here we go. Rural Halton. So we, one of the most reliable source of data that we have in Canada is the census. And so this is based on the 21 Census of Population. We also, in this, Richard Lau is going to be talking with you at some points today, has also mined through the Census of Agriculture. So that's also part of the census that happened. So there's a deeper dive into that. We've also pulled data from the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Agriculture Division, and Halton Region Federation of Agriculture shared information with us as well. There's some references to the Greenbound Foundation in here. So you'll see that there's a variety of data sets. Before I get started, you thought I was starting. A piece of information that we realized as we were peer reviewing and going through is the story of Halton, of people who live in our rural community or work or serve or, are farming in our rural community. And I have a QR code here. I'm going to put it up again later on. If you have a story that you would like to share about living, working, playing, in our rural community in Halton, we would love to hear it. So this QR code takes you to a Survey Monkey. They've got some really simple questions there for you. We would write up your story and we would share that story with your permission. We'd go through a process with you. Understanding how people are experiencing our rural community today in 2025 is really important to us. And it might be another ongoing source of data that we use to make sure that this is a living document and a living understanding of what is happening in rural Halton. All right, so here we go. Now we're really going to get into it. So this is a map of rural population by dissemination. So we wanted to first sort of define what is rural. So according to census, an urban area is referred to as a population center as defined as having a population of at least 1,000 people and a density of 400 or more persons per square kilometer. Areas that do not meet those are classified as rural. And so the data that you have here in front of you is actually done by dissemination area. And Richard, did you want to chip in here just to share a little bit about how we understand geography and the numbers, that just to give some clarity for folks?
Sure. As Richard mentioned earlier, we rely on the census to give us information on the socio-demographic of the population. Because of that, so we had to use the geographic area classification. Census divide the whole country for collecting data by dissemination area, which we call it DA. And for that, we will have basic socioeconomic data on that. And on the map where the area color in brown are the collection of DAs that are under the definition of rural areas.
Excellent. Thanks, Richard. You do that way better than me. That's awesome. I love working with geographers. It's amazing. So this map is famously known as Map 1 from the Halton Region official plan. So it's important to know, I'll just do a proviso that things have changed since some things. The landscape around planning has changed in Ontario, and so Halton Region is no longer a planning body. But the municipalities are responsible now for the official plans that oversee these areas. But up until 2024, they were involved, and so this actually comes out of the regional official plan, and it's called Map One. But it's our map two in the document, so not to be confused. But it provides you a look at. I'm going to show it twice. It shows you a whole look at sort of the rural landscape and the frameworks that are sort of overlaid on that. But you can see in here that there are little brown squares, and those are actually our hamlets, and there are 15 hamlets. And I was like, can we name them? So I don't know if you can, but we they are here. Where am I going? Oops, there they are. Moffat, Brookfield, Campbellville, Bannockburn, Crusen's Corners, Balnafad, Terracotta, Glen Williams, Silver Creek, Limehouse, Henderson's Corners, Norval, Kilbride, Lowville, and Mount Nemo. And I have been on my journeys between home in Burlington to Acton, where one of our offices is. I'm on the lookout for a couple of these because I don't know if I've been through them all. And these are important centers of community in our rural community. So I just wanted to name them and shout out to, I don't know if anybody, if you're from one of these rural hamlets, please put it in the chat. Love to hear about that. So again, this map one is from the regional official plan, and it shows the structural land use of designations in the region. So the concurrent designation of a prime agriculture area and the natural heritage system. So this is a lot of planning lingo for folks. In rural Halton, it represents a complex land use policy and some challenges that are in there. So the designations, you'll see the different colors. Like around the purple is prime agricultural land, and then there's the regional national heritage system, which is in the green. They're used as the provincial land use planning framework, part of the provincial planning statement, that create overlapping regulatory requirements that affect land management decisions. So how those lands can be used. Agricultural stakeholders, we heard loud and clear as we were doing the review for this paper, really emphasize the need for operational flexibility and economic viability, while environmental perspectives highlight the interdependence of all the ecological systems and agricultural sustainability. Also in this is like the Niagara Escarpment Commission and the constraints that are put there for protection and conservation. But we think, oh, well, we've got a rural landscape and we can farm that. And it's actually just not that simple. And so we want to just, be upfront about that and share that. And we heard this loud and clear from our rural folks who were reviewing for us. So let's learn a little bit about the population. So while rural areas represent a significant share of Halton's geography, they experienced modest growth between the last two census periods, between 2016 and 2021. The rural population grew by 2.3%, getting up to just over 23,000 people, compared to 8.8% increase in Halton's overall population during that period. And you can see here by age distribution, just want to flag that 65 and over. This is where rural community is an older population. So something to note as we go. Household size and type. So this is kind of interesting. Looking at where our rural, so rural is in the darker blue, and the teal color is our Halton average. You'll see that there's more two-person households, a lot less one-person households living in rural community, and then you'll see that there's more 5 or more persons, and so there's fewer smaller households, but they're more likely to accommodate larger families or potentially multi-generational families. Again, we'd love to hear your story about who's living in rural Halton. The numbers only tell us one thing, and we can make some guesses, our best guesses about who's out there. But that is what the numbers are sort of pointing to. 92% of our rural households are actually owner occupied. So a lot less rental situation out in the rural population based on the census data. But you can see that one person household occupied, again, less in the rural areas. This multi-generational household we're seeing more of in our rural community. as well, and families with no children. So again, speaking to that the aging population in a rural community, it kind of aligns with that. Um, this came up as we were doing the peer review, and I know, Richard, do you want to speak into this case of for the higher value of homes? But just the highlight is just rural Halton's experienced a substantial rise in housing values. Is there anything you wanted to say about this in particular? Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot, big time.
Unfortunately, the census doesn't collect data on the actual value of the household, so we had kind of used some other data to kind of show the changes. And one of the questions asked in the census about the respondents, how much you think your property worth at that time. So this is subjective, it's not really a survey of the property. So what it shows here are the average and the median house values for 2021. And you can see at the very end where the increase had, I guess, over 100%. So I use that as an indication that, yes, the property value in the rural area have gone higher than the average.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, in Richard's analysis, we were able to see that in many of those dissemination areas, house values more than doubled between the two census periods. So, that's we probably will have seen some of that in our urban areas as well, but it was quite marked. And, it was an anecdote that people shared with us in their peer review. And Richard was able to go back out and look for a data source to see if we could validate that those assumptions that were happening in community. In terms of housing and agriculture, we'll get deeper into agriculture in a second, but, just this came from Greenbelt Foundation. We know that, housing is an issue and it came up a lot. So, like in other areas, rising land values, limited housing options affect farm families and agricultural workers, threatening the region's agricultural productivity. So this is mirrors a provincial trend where housing stability directly influences agricultural sector. And the Greenbelt Foundation had some great recommendations that people enjoyed. Streamline additional residential units. So ARUs, you might hear about those if you're in Burlington, actually Milton as well. They're well established, some policies on that. In terms of getting some smaller units onto properties, enabling innovative housing, supporting modular homes again, strengthening municipal integration, incorporating agricultural housing needs into municipal planning and engaging agriculture advisory committees, supporting farm worker housing, so developing targeted strategies for on-farm communal housing solutions. We'll talk a little bit about our temporary farm workers in agriculture in a minute, and enhancing rural infrastructure, aligning infrastructure planning with agriculture housing needs, and improving data collection, increasing comprehensive database tracking. So one thing that I can say, in following up with this report from the Greenbelt Foundation is that, some good work has been done around ARU policies, but it is limited, in particular in Milton, but it is limited in Burlington in the rural community. I'm not sure if Garth is here, but maybe if you're getting a small group with Garth, he was signed up, I think, at one point. He's an ARU expert. And there's some options there, but these are additional residential units. And I think there's lots of, and there's currently some grants out there or loans out there you can get. So an interesting option for our rural community for adding space for living. Looking at household income, here is again rural area compared to our Halton average, and you can see that rural Halton residents were less likely to be in the lowest income groups. And 30.1% earned over $200,000 compared to only 22.6% in Halton of people living earning over $200,000. But we always say but, because this is data from the last census, which happened during COVID. And so we always want to remind people that during COVID, there were income supports that came through CERB, for example, that were basically like a guaranteed income, and our poverty levels across Canada declined during this time period. And so we are, there's always a caveat when we look at this data. We do know, and I showed you a slide earlier, way earlier, about rising poverty. So that may apply to the rural community. That tax filer data doesn't allow us to break it down that way. But we just wanted to say during this time period, this is what we saw. That may be changing. Please use the story function to tell us what's happening in rural community as it relates to household income. I want to talk a little bit about community services because I looked at who is registered, and there's lots of you who are out there providing supports in community. And so Richard has done this by Hamlet because that's really where sources, where people touch down to provide sources. But we've got some categories here: childcare and early learning, health and wellness, and they're found in Brookville, Glen Williams, Limehouse, childcare services. Campbellville and Kilbride offer access to assistive devices, pharmacies, addiction treatment, smoking cessation programs. Hornby has a large nonprofit that provides addiction counseling and treatment as well. Recreation supports arts, culture, and heritage. There's several hamlets that have sports programming, all sorts of sports teams, and badminton, tennis, for example, hiking, access to parks and trails, supporting physical activity and outdoor activities. And then Campbellville and Glen William host arts instructions, museums, and cultural heritage groups. And so we may have missed some, but those are some touches on that. And then places of worship and meeting spaces and social services and supports, other category, found in nearly all the hamlets, including Brookville, Campbellville, Kilbride, Norville. Faith spaces are critical for social connection, people getting together, mutual support, and civic engagement. Places for people to come and vote, even community meals. I love to see the sign for the spaghetti dinner. Kilbride is particularly notable for offering it has a public library in Burlington, extreme weather warming and cooling centers, and health services for people with disabilities. And Glen Williams and Norville also support residents with low-cost meals and multicultural programming. So if you're doing something outside of that, please, again, add it to the chat. We'll collect up this information to help inform our understanding of this. But those are just some of the pieces. I guess the question that I always raises for me, though, is what are the gaps? What's not? What supports aren't happening? And so as we go through the rest of the data, if you're providing services in the community, maybe you want to think about that. Transportation. Big issue. And data points on this are tough, but I wanted to share this, and some of it comes from the peer review process. Personal vehicles are the primary mode of transportation. Definitely limited public transit. Transit equity in Halton is a big issue. And so wanted to flag that, in terms of getting around and for youth needing to get to things, or if you're trying to move between communities. Walking and cycling infrastructure is a bit limited. I should say congestion, not congression. Sorry, my apologies for that. Congestion is definitely something that we heard about. Speed concerns, road infrastructures are not always built for farm vehicles. And so this is part of the importance of working with, farming associations, working with our municipal folks to figure these things out. Agriculture, this is just really a great information. We're going to get into agriculture now, and I'm looking at my time. Got to keep moving. It contributes to Canada's economy with a value of production totaling $118.6 billion. We need our farmers. The sector employed, also 6,400 temporary foreign workers, more than for agriculture. Temporary foreign workers in 2022, accounting for nearly 1 in 4 agricultural employees, where more than 2 in 5 worked in Ontario. In the first 10 months of 2023, Halton welcomed around 5,400 temporary foreign workers, significant increase from those in 2015. When we look back, and 44% were in Oakville, followed by Milton, Burlington, and then Halton Hills. I did have a look as well, just to see what was in the federal budget. There was some caps, we have some caps on immigration that came up in this week's budget. There is a proviso. I just, looked into that the other day as I was preparing. There is a proviso that there will be some allowances made for sectors that are impacted by tariffs. and I looked into that. There seemed to be some thinking that that might help with the folks working in agriculture. I don't know, but that might be a point of advocacy that we want to be looking at as a community. These folks are a huge part of our farming community and something that we need to be paying attention to. Some great data from that was shared by our federation with us, just looking at Halton agriculture at a glance. 431 farms, 900 acres of farmland. We've got 23% sell products directly to customers. You can read all of those things for yourself, but we've got 28,765 people employed in the local agri-food sector, local agricultural food establishments, and we've got 663 million in farm cash receipts. Floriculture, sod, and gains in oils and cattle are number one. This is a county look at Halton from the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture data here. We're generating renewable energy. 32.8% of farms operating are female, and 67.5% are small farms. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So we do have declining numbers of farms in Halton, though. The trend is apparent from all the way from 1976, when Halton had 1,035 farms, and we're down to this 431 based on the 21 census data. Notably, between 2006 and 2021, the total number of farms in Halton dropped nearly 24%, while the total area actively farmed decreased by approximately 18%. So mid-sized farms are have once been the backbone of local food production, they've been declining and sharply. At the same time, a division in farm sizes is emerging. There's this modest increase in very small farms under 10 acres, often maybe indicative of a lifestyle or a part-time operation, maybe. The number of very large farms has risen. So the number of farm operators has decreased by 24%, along with a surge in farms valued at over 2 million. And that trend reflects that consolidation of farmland and capital, where a few but larger, more industrialized operations dominate the landscape. So I don't live in rural Halton, and so I'm only imagining how that changes the community culture of our rural community. And I love it. If we've got to get to small group and chatting here so we can hear from people. On gross farm receipts, overall, the farm receipts data highlight a rural economy in transition. While the total revenue is rising, fewer farms are sharing in that growth. So the trend points towards a concentration, again, of agricultural wealth and decline of small-scale farming, and potential widening gap in economic viability between a small and a large farm operation. You can see here in figure 10, just to see that change over time between 2006, trending across all of those census periods. Number of young farmers operating a farm in Halton has halved in the last 2 decades. At the same time, women continue to play a key role, particularly in single operator farms, though the overall number of female operators is also declining. But you can see this is, we have older folks reflecting back to that very early data we shared about our aging population in the rural community, and these folks are kind of holding down the system, and that's a challenge. Again, just back to the economic contribution of farming in Halton, it's significant, but is becoming more concentrated. As we said, the increase in farm operations with over 3.5 million in capital highlights the shift towards capital-intensive agriculture. That can be very transformative, good or bad, alienating potentially smaller community-based farms and eroding the social fabric of rural Halton, as an assumption that we've made. Love to hear from you. Many Halton farms remain family businesses, though, and one of the ways that they have remained strong has been through agritourism, or opening the doors to Halton residents to explore Halton's agricultural industry and connect with local farmers. I know that I go to a local agritourism space every Saturday, and I love it. I highly recommend you pick a farm, pick a rural business to support, and to stick to it, and you will build community there. Reflecting back again, we're almost done here. Navigating the policy frameworks. We mentioned, when we think back to that map 1 from the regional plan, and all of those different, like the Niagara Escarpment, a natural heritage system, and our prime agricultural landscape. It's important to know that farming in Halton Region operates within these environmental protection frameworks. That's the Escarpment Plan and Natural Heritage System. They create opportunities and challenges. I know our policymakers have put things in place so that there would be conservation and protection of ecosystems, and this is important for the viability of our landscape. But farmers have to navigate environmental assessments for new projects, maintain natural features like woodlands, wetlands, and face many limitations on non-agricultural developments of their land. And many farmers view these regulations as constraints on their operations and the flexibility in impacting their viability. And so we want to make sure that both of those voices are presented here. And we just wanted to share that with you, that farming is not easy, and protecting your landscape is important. And there is a definitive tension that lies out there that we became very aware of as we did this project. So calls to action, and these are just some. As Halton Region continues to grow and urbanize, it is essential that rural communities are not left behind. We need our municipalities to incorporate rural specific needs into land use, housing, and transportation strategies. Service providers need to ensure access to healthcare, education, and community supports in lower density, aging, or rural areas. Policymakers need to continue to protect prime farmland, ensuring that local agriculture groups are consulted on policy and infrastructure design with an eye to agricultural viability in Halton. Local support for the next generation of farmers through economic incentives, along with processes and policies that help Halton farmers to flourish, make it easier to run viable and environmentally beneficial farm businesses. Policy efforts to prevent illegal activities such as soil dumping in truck yards and farm properties came up through our process, and community organizations and partners to engage rural residents and tailor outreach efforts to reflect local realities. Those are just some of the calls to actions that we came up with. We are very open to hearing what you have to say. We're excited. We've got 30 people in the room right now that may have some ideas, so I'm pretty excited about that. Are there any like hot take questions, things that people need to know before we usually what we do right now is we spend some time in some small groups. This is a large group to have a conversation. We'll put us into some Zoom rooms, and we will. And I don't know if we can stop recording now, Stephen. That would be awesome. And but is there any questions that came up? All right, folks. Folks are coming in, coming back. It's awesome. We've got some people left for a wrap up. I've added to the chat. We have Stephanie Tevez here. She's one of our amazing students from McMaster, and she did the hard job of going through 29 pages of our report and distilling it down to a blog. For those of you who don't have time to read the whole thing, I have a link there for you, but also in that takes you to the entire report. So for those of you who want to do the full read and see all the maps and all the things, please go there. But there's a link for you. Amazing. Anyone want to share what was coming up in your group? A couple of reflections, something that you might share, or even better, something you might do different. Brave soul.
I'll start us off.
Perfect.
Well, I was just so pleased to meet someone who is here as a resident of North Halton.
Yay.
And CDH is so good at, including people with lived experience and not just service providers. So it's just fantastic to have that voice in the room.
Oh, lovely. Thanks, Sarah. That's great. Shout out to folks who live in rural Halton, and for citizens who show up. It is amazing. It is amazing. Thank you. Good stuff. Anyone else have something you want to share? Something that was coming up, something you might want to do different.
Risha, if I may,
please, you may.
And this is, I guess it's a little bit with regards to availability of service of the different not-for-profits that are around there. The internet connectivity in the rural community is sporadic, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of the people that are blacked out here, it's due to the fact that it gives them better connectivity. So just that's something that if you could push for, like, I mean, we're so close to Toronto and we're major centers ourselves, and yet our rural community doesn't have that connectivity.
Yes.
Is really sad.
It is. I mean, honestly, when I actually drive, one of our offices is in Acton, so we spend time in Acton, and I actually have no cell service in Acton. Zero. And when I'm driving home, there's that massive like it's like the escarpment is like a dead zone. I'm like, like I have not fallen off of the face of the earth, family. There's a dead zone. And I have often wondered, how did kids do school during COVID? I have no idea how people are working from our rural communities, if you're working remotely. So yeah, thank you, Nancy. Huge. And when you think about, that connectivity is linked to information. Information is power. And so it really takes power away from our rural community when we don't have that access. Thank you. Huge issue. Thank you. We'll follow that. That's great. If there's something that you think we can do about that we could share with people as a way of people advocating for better service. I don't know those things, but I would love to hear, like, if the Federation is doing something on that. Nancy, please let us know. We would share that out. Thank you. Huge. Anyone else have one thing? Barb, did you want to say something, or Patricia?
Barb, go ahead if you have something else to say.
Oh, is my hand up?
No. Okay. No. Go ahead, Patricia.
Okay. Yeah. So I just, again, if this is something that is of interest of people in terms of advocating for essentially digital equity. It's something that I'm at Acclaim Health, and I was saying we have a technology program for older adults. Ooh. And it's become more than digital literacy for us. It is digital equity. So it is something that I'm very interested in, if anybody else is interested in looking at ways of advocating.
Amazing. Thanks, Patricia. That's great. Yeah, so connect with Patricia on that. I'd love to hear what's happening around that. That is amazing. Awesome. If you've got other things, and I think people are adding some pieces to the chat, I'm gonna go back to doing a little bit of sharing with you, and take us to, if you are interested. So I guess once again, here we go. We do a podcast, and we will now do a podcast that follows up on this, and we would like that podcast to have rural voices. So Stephen is here. He's been managing some pieces of it. Stephen does our podcast. It's fun. No one does a podcast that doesn't have a good time with Stephen. If you haven't done one before, it's not scary. We send you the questions in advance. We would love that to be rural voices. So if you are interested, this takes you to, so you can see some of our other podcasts, but please let us know if you're interested in being part of a podcast to talk about rural Halton, because there's the paper and blog posts and social media posts, but now we want to hear, voices and stories from rural Halton. Of course, I'm going to send this link out to you as well, to everybody and those who dropped off the call, but we would love your feedback on today's session and what you heard, and how that may or may not have helped you. It helps us do our work better. That QR code takes you there, but don't worry, I'm going to follow up with an email with a link to the survey. It takes literally 2 minutes. It's so short, I promise you. And just hit some highlights for you. Other things that are upcoming with CDH as we close out. We have some great volunteer management foundations is coming up. This is a 2-day in-person course in Milton this time around, November the 19th and 26th. Sammy does this. He's from Volunteer Toronto, works with Heather on our Director of Volunteer Halton. It's a fabulous course. We had a waiting list from last time, so we're offering it again this time. We've got also, if you're a volunteer coordinator, and I've been thinking about how do we do civic engagement, and how do we deepen our dive and learn from our rural community? Because I think civic engagement is high, but are you supporting volunteers? And we actually have a community of practice that meets quarterly, and we have a session coming up next week. So please join. That's free. National Housing Day. We will be talking about all things housing on November the 21st, Friday. It is happening in Burlington. at the Polish Hall, and breakfast is included. It is free, and it's going to be a great day. Thanks to folks like Nancy who have been helping us to organize that. And then also celebrating the sector event. This is happening. CDH has been working with our nonprofit friends and community folks. We'll be coming together on the 28th to launch Impact Halton Coalition. There's a small charge. There's breakfast. I promise it's going to be a great, impactful, powerful day for folks who are part of the nonprofit sector or supporting the nonprofit sector or want to learn more about what's happening out there in our impacting community. We also just have upcoming, our next community day to watch is probably going to be on Meet Youth, which is youth who are not in education, employment, or training. And that is coming up. The team is working on that. It's going up for peer review now, and exciting, difficult data actually on youth in our community. The house is on fire out here in community, right? And our youth are struggling. And so we need to support them. So we're really important. This is an important paper that's coming out. We have work that I mentioned earlier, doing a belonging, our Voice of Lived Experience project. These QR codes take you directly to places that you can learn more about those. And I just want to say thank you for being here this morning. Thank you for spending time with us on a Friday in November. And your voices are important. And thank you for sharing with everybody and meeting someone and sharing information. Appreciate it. We will send all of this stuff out to you in short order, either today or on Monday. Thanks for being here, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.